Hello. I think I've got things working now. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know if you can't, if anyone shows up and you can't hear me. Just let me know. So today I'm going to share a little bit about how to stay healthy during the winter, really during any time. A lot of these tips will apply to any time of year. Uh, because they're Ayurvedic concepts, and Ayurveda is the traditional medicine of India. And they are concepts that, when you understand the basic concepts, you can apply them to any time of year. And some of them, of course, will be a little bit different at in winter than they are at other times of year. So, for those of you who don't know, or maybe who read about Ayurveda but haven't reviewed that information for a long time, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of what Ayurveda is, and that way you will be reminded and you can understand things a little bit more clearly as we go along today. But of course, you can always review the Ayurveda information in your manual. There's Ayurveda in the 200-hour manual, and then there's an expanded Ayurveda section if you're doing the 300-hour, 150 core manual has a lot of Ayurveda in there. So Ayurveda, as I said, is the traditional medicine of India. And it came about thousands of years ago at a time when there wasn't as much of a separation between science and spirituality and philosophy. So it kind of incorporates everything. Ayurveda is quite a huge umbrella term. It's often called, well, which was just to say there's a lot under the umbrella of Ayurveda. So uh, yoga is part of Ayurveda, but Ayurveda isn't necessarily part of yoga. So that is to say, in Ayurveda, it was always understood that yoga, especially the way that it was practiced thousands of years ago, usually by renunciates, people who had left their household and gone, to be alone and to meditate and transcend their body. So in Ayurveda, originally, yoga was the part of Ayurveda that applies to spiritual attainment. But at this time, we often say that, or I often say that we do yoga for householders, because none of us um, is trying to, you know, what's the word? Oh, it's leaving me. It's gone. We're not trying to leave our bodies by using yoga and meditation, right? We want to stay right here and just enjoy life and have a more fulfilling life. So today I'm not going to talk as much about yoga, because I want to tell you about just some really great tips for staying healthy during winter, and then what to do if you do happen to start feeling under the weather. So Ayurveda is not always so different from Western science. And in terms of staying healthy in the winter, that's definitely the case. Uh, at least the first part of it, which is reducing susceptibility to illness. So in Western medicine, we understand this concept of homeostasis, and it's just as important in Ayurveda. However, the way that Ayurveda looks at it is probably a little bit more, maybe more holistic, or maybe we just talk about it more in Ayurveda. In school, we understand homeostasis as the necessary internal environment required in our bodies in order to maintain health. And so we think about things like body temperature, and that's why we take our temperature when we get sick, to see what our temperature is, to know if we have a fever. And then, and just a little note on fever, uh, oftentimes we think of fever as not a good thing. Now, when fever gets exaggerated, when it goes beyond a certain point, absolutely, it becomes dangerous and we need to lower it. However, Ayurvedic perspective is that just a little bit of elevation of body temperature for a healthy person, that's a sign that your body's trying to fight something off. And so it's an intelligent response. So I'm not here to prescribe or to tell you what to do, but to give you things to consider and to more deeply investigate, if you like, which is the idea that a little elevation in body temperature is a sign that your body is fighting off an infection. It's true. So a viral infection, a bacterial infection, and a little bit of a fever in Ayurveda's eyes can be a good thing. So unless you have other susceptibilities, other conditions, and you're worried about a little bit of a fever, you can maybe ask your healthcare practitioner or your doctor, how far can I let this fever go before I should start taking, medicines to reduce it, whether acetaminophen or ibuprofen or whatever it is that you use where you are. And so that's something to talk to your doctor about maybe next time you go, because there can be this prevalent idea that as soon as any elevation of body temperature happens, we need to suppress it. We need to push it down with some over the counter fever medication. And even your doctor might tell you that may not be the case for you. So that's a little thing to consider, is that a fever is your body's healthy response. It's heating up inside to burn, to destroy a virus, usually. And so that's just something interesting that maybe you've not considered. So homeostasis includes having the right body temperature. It also includes having the right blood pH, so the acid-base balance of your blood, and other factors in our bodies. Now, even if we just start with body temperature, and again, so now I've talked a little bit about fever when body temperature goes up. But in Ayurveda's eyes, one of the things that we tend to forget, some of us more than others, is that, or maybe not think about, maybe we've never thought about it, is that, and one of your parents or caregivers probably said to you, don't go outside without a hat, don't go outside with those sandals on, it's already fall. And so this is a really simple but really effective thing that you can do to help reduce your susceptibility to getting sick. Stay warm. So they were right, your caregivers were right. Put on that hat, put on that scarf, put on those socks. Some of us, we even live, maybe we like I really like a chilly home. So you can see I'm wearing several layers here. And that's because I like for my room temperature to be a little bit cool, because in Ayurveda I'm the Pitta type. You can see by the pink in my skin that I have a lot of fire naturally. So I really like the ambient temperature to be cool. But I do tend to spend a lot of time with cozy socks. Let's see if I can get my foot up here. There's my cozy socks. They have ducks on them. And also, then I put layers on, and I often wear a hat, but I thought I should maybe take my hat off for this presentation. And I'll just take off layers and put on layers throughout the day, depending on how active I am, depending if I'm drinking hot tea. So another wonderful thing to keep you warm in the winter months. And I know a lot of this, you're probably like, oh my gosh, this is so common sense. Of course I knew this. People tell me I already do these things. Awesome. Then you already know a lot of it. What I'm here to do then is to affirm for you that yes, these things are real things that matter, keeping your body warm. And that's even more important when you are a kapha predominant or vata predominant type. So you might remember there are 3 constitutions in Ayurveda. Rather, my mistake, there are 3 doshas in Ayurveda. And different combinations of those doshas make up our constitution, which we also sometimes call the dosha. So they're individually called doshas. And then our unique combination is also sometimes referred to as our dosha. So depending on your dosha, and really you don't even need to know your dosha. If you feel cold, then you need to do things to stay warm. Because if you feel cold and you don't put on a hat or warm socks or a sweater or drink some hot tea or close the window, then your body's going to be struggling to maintain that basic temperature. And if your body, here's the crux of it, if your body is putting a bunch of energy into maintaining homeostasis, then it can't work on other things. It can't work on, building immunity. This is a very general way of talking about things, but it can't work on proper digestion or apoptosis, which is like healthy programmed cell death. So maintaining homeostasis is so incredibly important. I can't say too much about it, but I do want to tell you about some other things, and we only have about another 20 minutes. So I'm not going to harp on it too much longer, but let me just review that again. So if our body temperature is not at the lowest temperature that it needs to be, that temperature that we're told that we, whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, that you put the thermometer in your mouth and that's the temperature you want and nothing higher. If we and even so, I have to say as well that you wouldn't be able to like pop a thermometer in your mouth probably and notice that you were too cold. Like you're probably going to be always at that temperature, because that, or if not higher, because that is your body's main job. Your body's main job is maintain this body temperature. Now it can be measured. You can be fractions lower, but I don't think your average home thermometer would measure that. Maybe a digital one. In any case, if you physically feel cold, that is your sign to do whatever you need to do to feel warm. So I know there's so many people. I was saying to a friend of mine the other day who was going outside in flip-flops, and we're in Canada. Granted, we're on the west coast, which is warmer, but it was like 4 degrees. And my friend was going outside in flip-flops to do something. And I said, put some dang socks and shoes on, because then your body's just going to be struggling for I don't know how long to warm you back up when you come back in. So unless you're in absolutely perfect health and totally robust, the number one rule to staying healthy in winter and any time where it applies is do whatever you need to feel warm. You don't have to feel hot, but if you feel cold, drink a hot beverage, put on a hat, socks, or another layer. Do a little bit of exercise. So sometimes you're outside and you feel cold and we start shivering and chattering, and that's our body's healthy response to being cold. Maybe just start jumping up and down. Start doing a few of your favorite yoga moves. So stay warm. That's number one. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. So stay warm. So staying warm is really important, but what happens if you do your best to do that and you still get sick? So we're in a time that's pretty strange. We have a worldwide pandemic. So I want to again offer my disclaimer. I am not giving medical advice here. I am offering suggestions for your consideration for minor colds and flu. And of course, at this time, it's a time when if you have any of those symptoms, you need to speak to a doctor and find out what to do next. However, let's put that aside for a moment and let's imagine that we are before or after this pandemic time, and that we are just talking about regular colds and flu for otherwise relatively healthy people. Here are some things that you might do. So I'm not going to talk too much about actual Ayurvedic herbal remedies or natural remedies. Maybe I'll say a few names briefly, but I just really want to get the message across that I am not prescribing and I am not telling people what to take. Depending on where you live, you may not even be able to get those things. So, when I feel like I could get sick and I'm at risk for getting sick, I'll use combinations of, and there's more you need to know about most of these things than I can offer you here. But I'm just going to quickly say some names and you can do your own research. Echinacea, golden seal, oregano oil. These are some things, vitamin C and zinc. These are some things you can take to help support your immunity. Before you take them, I would suggest getting more information from, your favorite natural health care practitioner, your doctor, wherever it is that you get your health information, because some of those things do the same job. For example, golden seal is a natural antibiotic and oregano is a natural antibiotic. And both of them, you may or may not know, also kill the healthy bacteria in your body. So they do kill viruses, bacteria and fungus, but they also kill the healthy bacteria in your body. So you don't want to take them endlessly for prolonged periods of time. And you don't need to take those two things generally together. You might alternate them, golden seal and oregano. But again, the bottom line is that just taking these things randomly without knowing what they do can cause problems. You don't want to be taking oregano oil endlessly because you're killing all the good bacteria. And if you're not putting that back with probiotics, then you're ultimately taking away a part of your homeostatic balance, the healthy bacteria, the healthy flora that is actually contributing to your health. So make sure that you're really well aware of how to use these things. It's fortunate that we have these things available, and unfortunate that sometimes they're available without sufficient information in order to use them properly. So what more will I say about those remedies? Not too much. What I want to talk about is things that you can do at home with really, really safe and yet really effective remedies that most of us have in our kitchen. So one of the things you can do, even if you just think you're susceptible to illness, and then again to help keep you warm, is take your hot water to the next level. This is just hot water, but take your hot water to the next level, peel and boil up some ginger, just fresh ginger. Put it in a pot in the morning, boil it up, maybe everybody likes different strengths, and the longer you can use a fairly small amount of ginger, like maybe like a 2 inches. Sorry for the lack of metric here, even though I'm Canadian, some things I still say in inches. So a couple inches in length and maybe 3/4 of an inch or even half an inch in width. If you boil that amount of ginger in a liter or so of water for say 20 minutes, that's going to be a really strong ginger beverage. And you can then put that preferably into a thermos where it's going to stay hot, and then sip on that throughout the day. And not only is that going to contribute to you staying warm, so it's going to help you maintain homeostasis. In Ayurveda's eyes, another aspect of maintaining health is stimulating or keeping the fire going. We call it Agni in Sanskrit. You might remember from reading about Ayurveda in your curriculum. So we want to keep Agni burning bright and strong. And one really simple but effective way we can do that is by sipping on ginger water throughout the day, especially if we think we're that we have a particular susceptibility at a given time. This is also really great for digestion, and anything that's good for digestion is good for maintaining health, because the less energy your body needs to put into digestion, the more energy it has to maintain homeostasis and to work on other things like microcellular digestion or immune response, and so on and so on. So ginger tea, wonderful. Now, if you've actually become a little bit sick or you're experiencing some mild symptoms, and again, you're going to talk to your doctor because of COVID and all that. But if you find out, or if in another time when you know it's just a regular cold or a minor flu, then if you have some symptoms, you can add, after you've boiled the ginger, you can add some honey, unpasteurized honey, so raw honey, which is the most common one I think that you find these days, at least in Canada. We can find unpasteurized honey very easily. And lemon, fresh lemon or lime. Fresh lemon or lime, once you've just cut it and it hasn't yet been exposed to oxygen, then there's tons of vitamin C in there. One thing we don't think about is we think of lemon and lime having a lot of vitamin C, but the longer it's exposed to air, the more that vitamin C is destroyed through oxidation, I think. So you want to use your lemon and lime once you've cut into it, as much as you can. Use it fresh. And that means that those bottles of lemon and lime juice, even if they're organic, they taste good, but they probably don't have much vitamin C left in them because vitamin C is destroyed by contact with oxygen. So fresh lemon or lime and honey in your ginger to taste, in your ginger water. And the reason that this is helpful, Ayurveda says that certain substances are attracted to certain tissues of our body. And Ayurveda suggests that honey is attracted to the mucous membranes, and that is where viruses hide out in our bodies. And so when we drink the ginger water with honey, Ayurveda says that the honey takes that ginger water to the mucous membranes, and that's where the virus is hiding out. And the ginger is hot and spicy. So, in a way, it has the effect of amplifying the heat in the mucous membranes with the idea of destroying the virus. And then you've also added lemon or lime to it, and that fresh lemon or lime has vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, so that's helping as well. So ginger, lemon, honey, and there's no real strict recipe. You just want that ginger to be strong enough that it tastes heating and warm. And if it's too strong for you, just add a little bit of hot water to your ginger water until it's palatable for you. Because those of us who are already really quite warm, like pitta type people, we won't be able to tolerate as much of that spiciness as other people will. And some people, just due to the way that they feel about spiciness, they won't be able to necessarily tolerate it really strong. So just cut it with hot water until it's the right temperature. So first thing, review, stay warm, whatever you have to do to stay warm. Second thing, ginger lemon honey tea. All right, so what's next? So I find when I'm getting sick, and again, I'm not prescribing, these are things that have worked for me. I do have an 18-year education in Ayurveda, but I am not a doctor. But here we go, here's some more things. Neti. So before you've gotten sick and when you're trying to avoid getting sick, or at the very beginning when you just maybe have some mild congestion, neti is it's actually a kriya, so it's a cleansing practice. And you really can, if you tend to be a mucousy person just in general, or you suffer from allergies, this can be used as well. It can't at that time. It can't be used when you're already really stuffed up, unfortunately. And in that case, you would steam first. So maybe I'll talk about steaming first and then I'll go back to neti. Because what I usually like to do when I'm avoiding getting sick or when I'm trying to recover health, I take my supplements on an empty stomach in the morning, whatever it is I'm doing, whatever combination of echinacea or golden seal or my vitamin C and zinc. And then vitamin C and zinc can be taken with food, but I take the other ones on an empty stomach. Then I'll do a steam. So boil up some water. I like to use tea tree oil. Now, tea tree oil is very strong, and it's really important you don't use too much. So I want to be really clear that if you choose to put tea tree oil in your steam that you're going to do, that you're going to breathe in, then you're only using 1 or 2 drops of tea tree oil, and you are not inhaling the first 45 to 60 seconds after you put that tea tree in the water. So boil up a pot of water. Maybe there's only half a liter of water in there, maybe a liter or so. And you know what? Earlier when I said to boil up a liter of ginger water, I usually do about 2 liters. So it's up to you. I just like to be efficient, and I probably go through that in a day in the winter. So boil up just about a liter of water in a pot, and then put it on a surface that it's not going to burn. And remember that you can also put it in a bowl. So if you're worried about just safety notes here, if you're worried about the handle of the pot getting caught with the towel you're going to use afterwards, then maybe you put your hot water in a bowl. Of course, you're always taking care because you're moving something very hot now, and especially if you're doing this for children, you want to be really, really careful. So maybe you put your bowl of hot water on a pot, on one of those, on a trivet on your table, and then you get a nice big towel, and then you lean over it and you put the towel over your head and you just breathe that steam in. Now you can do that just with plain steam. You could also do it with eucalyptus, and then if you do use tea tree oil or eucalyptus, it's only a couple of drops that you put on when it's finished boiling, and before you put your face over it, you wait 45 to 60 seconds for the first volatile oils to burn off because they're very strong, and then you can put your face over, put your towel over your head so you're getting all the steam in, and then breathing alternately through nose and mouth. Now, what I love about this with tea tree oil is that tea tree oil is antifungal, antiviral, and antibacterial. And when the essence of the tea tree oil is carried on the steam, it can get to areas of the respiratory system and in the sinuses that other things won't go, because steam can travel further than, for example, we can do, like you can do a gargle with salt if you think you're getting something happening in your throat and you can feel a scratchy throat. And salt is also antibacterial, but it's I don't believe salt is antiviral or antifungal. And even if you were to gargle with tea tree oil, and again, you do not ingest tea tree oil, but even if you were to gargle with it and then spit it out, it's still going to be local. It's still just going to be in your mouth and in your throat. When you inhale those oils on steam, they can get deeper down to wherever the steam can travel. That's where those oils that are antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral can get to. So I'm talking a little fast because I'm trying to shove so much stuff in here because it's only about a half-hour presentation. But again, I want to keep reiterating that it's really great if you have the support of a health practitioner, and or if you vet all of these suggestions in whatever way you want to before you use them. But these are things that have worked for me. So now to Neti. Once you've done your steam and you've loosened up everything in your sinuses, especially if you've started to get a little bit of mucusy in there, then you can do your neti. And so neti, you have your neti pot, you have some salt. Himalayan salt is great. Depending on the size of your neti pot, it's you need to have the right amount of salt because it approximates your own bodily fluid. And so it really depends on the size of your neti pot, how much salt you use. I have a neti pot that I think fits 2 cups of water. And what I do is I boil up water, and then I have also Brita water. So I have a water filter, and I put a little bit of the boiled water in, and then I add Brita water, the filtered water, until it's a temperature that feels really comfortable for my skin. So I put the hot water in the neti pot, then I put my salt in. I use half a teaspoon of mild, like Himalayan salt, which is much more mild than sea salt. And you don't want to use iodized salt for this. So no iodized salt for neti. You need to have just pure sea salt or something even milder, like Himalayan salt, the pink salt, or mineral salts. So 2 cups of water ultimately with half a teaspoon of salt, I think is what works for me. And you can kind of feel it in your nasal passages when it's not the right salt balance. So you can tweak it a little bit depending on what size vessel you have, or even look some amounts up online. So again, to get it a nice warm temperature, because you want it to approximate your body temperature, or at least approximate the temperature of your nasal passages. I'm not going to tell you how to do neti, that you'll have to look up. But doing neti and steaming at least twice a day when you think that you're at risk of getting sick, or when you're just, beginning to get sick, or even when you're fully with a cold and you still have fairly unblocked nasal passages, then you can use the steaming that gets things moving, and then the neti. Now, this might be our final thing. Talk, 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 talk. It's hard not to share more, but we don't have that much time. So it's really important when you think you're at risk of getting sick, or when you're already sick, to eat really fairly light. So they say feed a cold, starve a fever. I think when you have a fever, you have a flu, you often don't want to eat, but you still want to get your electrolytes, and you still want to get the right amount of salts and that kind of thing to maintain health and fluid in your body. So just mixing up some broth is a wonderful way. Broth, and eat maybe even if you feel a little bit hungry and you're dealing with just a normal flu and you're a healthy person, so you're not an immune compromised person, and you're not dealing with COVID-19. So we're just talking about normal, regular flus for healthy people, or colds. When you have a flu, just drinking up broth, drinking up hot water, tea, your ginger tea, those are all going to be really great, because we don't want to tax our body with digestion. If we eat too much when we're sick with a flu, then our bodies can't focus on getting rid of the virus. And that's why we have a fever, because our body is fighting this virus. When you have a cold, which doesn't have a fever along with it, that's the difference between a cold and a flu, is a flu has a fever and a cold generally doesn't. So we say feed a cold, starve a fever. So you want to eat enough but you don't want to eat a bunch of heavy foods that again ask your body to put a whole bunch of energy into digestion, and then it can't be getting rid of that virus because it's working so hard to digest what you're eating. So what would be good things to eat with a cold? Similar to with a flu, broth. So whatever kind of broth you tend to eat, whether you're vegetarian or whether you do a bone broth. And then maybe a little bit of rice. A great rice would be like a white basmati because it doesn't have, brown basmati has the husk on it. So that's got a lot of nutritional value, but that means it's also harder to digest. So when you're sick, you don't want to tax your nervous system. So you might put some rice in your broth just to give your body a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of glucose for the brain, a little bit of glucose for the muscles. So eating light, maybe some toast. We probably know these things already. You want to stay away from cold food. So all your food should be warm, moist, well cooked, and maybe with like a little bit of healthy oil in it. So most of your broth is going to have healthy oil, whether it's vegetarian broth or whether it is a non-vegetarian broth. So warm, moist, well cooked, but otherwise light and easy to digest. Something that doesn't ask your body to work really hard, like cold food, heavy food, dairy food, and that kind of thing. Some people also find that even juices, like commercial juices, are too much sugar and can contribute to mucus production. So there's pros and cons to orange juice when you're sick. I often crave it, so I just go with it with fresh orange juice. But some people will find that orange juice, it actually can promote mucus formation. But because I'm a fairly dry person, I'm a pitta predominant, vata secondary. You might remember vata's dry. So I don't actually have tons of mucus formation unless I'm quite sick. So you can also do a little more research, use your intuition, vet everything I've said on the internet, but I'll just recap it all. So number one, prevent illness by staying warm. How do we stay warm? We put on layers. We keep moving so that we're generating body heat from the inside out. We drink things like ginger tea. So these are all ways to stay warm in the first place. When you think that you are at risk for getting sick, you can keep drinking that ginger tea to stay warm and to keep the Agni, the fire, burning, to keep digestion of everything in your body going strong. You might choose to use natural remedies. Make sure that you're educated about them before you use them so you don't mistakenly combine things that do the same job and that have some negative effects combined with their positive effects. Like I said, oregano and oregano and golden seal are both natural antibiotics, and they do the same thing. They both kill bad things in your body, but also the good bacteria too. So you don't want to use those things endlessly. You want to use them for prevention and recovery of health, but not all the time. So you could take your natural remedies and then you steam. So when you think you're at risk of getting sick or you're already sick, steaming at least twice a day, 3 times a day is great too. You might just use that steam on its own, just plain and neutral, and that's going to help get everything nice and moist and moving in your sinus passages. You might use it with a couple of drops of eucalyptus or tea tree oil, and then make sure that you let the first 45 to 60 seconds pass after you put those oils on the water without breathing it in. It's too volatile at that point. It could damage the sensitive tissues of your nose and throat. So wait for a minute and then start breathing alternately in through your nose and mouth to get all of those steamed essential oils going down to where they can help you and up to where they can help you. After your neti, or after your steaming, do your neti. And you will have to find out yourself how to do neti. And again, 2 to 3 times a day. And finally, eat light. So whether it's a cold or a flu, or even if you're just trying to avoid getting sick, the less energy your body has to put into digestion of foods that are difficult to digest, which is heavy foods, cold foods, really oily foods, and even highly nutritively dense foods. Nutrition is good for us, of course, We want it, but we want it when we're well and our digestive system is robust. If we're trying to put a bunch of nutrients, heavy nutrients like raw nuts, and things like that in our system when we're getting sick, they're just really challenging to digest because they're beautiful little compact, nuts and seeds full of oils and nutrition, and that's challenging for our body to digest. So you can think about cooking your nuts, you can think about toasting your seeds. It'll destroy a tiny bit possibly of the nutritive value, but it'll make them a lot easier to digest. Or just stay away from them when you think you're getting sick. So eat light, broths, rice, other things that feel really simple to digest. Wow. Well, blah, blah, blah. Um, any questions before we say goodbye? I'm going to wait here and you can just put them in the comments. And then I will answer them before I end this. I'll wait about a minute or so because there's probably a lag too if you're far away. And thanks so much for joining me as well, those of you who had the chance to. I know a lot of this is, a lot of it's common sense, right? A lot of it's built into our culture. It was in maybe, if we were fortunate, then our caregivers already knew this and they brought it into our upbringing. And a lot of course, staying healthy is prevention. In fact, while I wait to see if anyone has a question, I'll share one little anecdote, one last anecdote, which is that in the past, thousands of years ago, the way that Ayurveda worked was that every family employed an Ayurvedic doctor. And so they had their own doctor. And the doctor's job was to keep everyone in the family from getting sick. So the doctor was paid monthly for prevention, which is such a different idea from how we do it now. And if someone got sick, the doctor wasn't paid because he or she, probably he back then, wasn't doing their job. So I think that's a cute little anecdote. I believe it's true. And I think it really shows the difference between Ayurveda and our Western perspective sometimes, which is that we go to a doctor when we're sick. Whereas in Ayurveda, the idea was the doctor was meant to keep you well. So I've got a question here. Oh, nope. Elisa's just sharing some thoughts. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Elisa, Amy, Celia, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. George, Andrea, and those of you who get to watch this afterwards. I hope you all have a wonderful day and stay warm.